Hey guys, we're back on the internet again, so let's just get right into it. IT guy claims it was our mistake. Didn't hang up the phone properly. So I worked on a technical support help desk for an ISP that did broadband. We used to send these rubbish modems with a single Ethernet socket designed to be connected to a switch. We had a problem customer who kept reporting theirs had died, and we sent out new ones. They were cheap, and we didn't really care about sending new ones out. So the customer's IT guy calls in saying the modem isn't working correctly. It turns out he had connected modem into modem into modem using RJ11 modem cables and thought he could run his business network off it. Trying not to laugh, I told him the hardware doesn't work like this and told him what to buy. The guy thanks me and hangs up, but doesn't hang up correctly, so the call is still connected. I hear him walk away from the phone and say to his boss, "They made a mistake and they're going to fix it." This annoyed me because I was proud of my work. I rang back and asked through a reception to talk to his boss. I said, "I just spoke to your employee regarding your networking problems. He didn't hang up the phone properly, so I heard his conversation with you. I want to clarify that we've made no mistake. Your employee is trying to use the hardware incorrectly, and he lied to you." The guy thanked me for telling him, and we ended the call. A few weeks later, their new IT guy called. The old guy had been fired. This kind of reminds me of that question of the day recently, where it was like, what's the furthest you've gone to prove a point? I think this might be one of those. Entitled mom tries to get me arrested. So I'm a 32-year-old male who's about 50 pounds overweight. So I was going for my morning jog in my local park. As I went past the playground, this kid cut right in front of me. I immediately came to a stop, but accidentally knocked the kid over. Oh, I say, "I'm so sorry, little guy, are you okay?" I help the kid up. At this point, the entitled parent starts running over. She says, "Get the F away from my child, you pervert!" She screams at the top of her lungs and surrounded by kids. Everybody in the park is staring at us. She says, "This fatty hit my son." I say, "I'm sorry, he ran in front of me. It was an accident." She then proceeds to scream at me for another 3 minutes while her son looks down at the ground silently. Eventually I get tired of trying to explain myself and decide to leave. As I turn away, the entitled mom grabs me by the arm and digs in. Says, "Where the F do you think you're going?" I yank away. She then grabs a can of pepper spray from her purse and sprays me directly in my eyes. I fall to the ground in pain. At this point, bystanders are stepping in to calm her down. As I slowly regain my vision, I see 2 police officers walking over the scene. They start asking what happened. Says, "This sick freak ran up to my son and threw him on the ground." This is where it gets good. The cops' dash cams were recording the whole thing from down the road. After reviewing the footage, they put entitled mom in handcuffs and took her away screaming. They asked me if I needed an ambulance, but I told them it was okay. Whatever pepper spray she used was really weak. I love when these entitled people think they get to act like cops, and then they get to bring in cops to do the rest of the work. Just remember, just because you're the one that called the police doesn't mean that they're gonna be on your side. Guy steals $400 of gas, but I get the last laugh. So I used to work at a marina when I was in high school that sold gas and allowed people to dock for free if they wanted to. Now one day a guy comes in on a pretty big boat and gets a lot of gas. Like $400 worth of gas. He comes to the counter to pay and gives me $400 in $100 bills, and I accept them and he goes on his merry way. Fast forward a week or so, and I'm told by my boss that the bills he paid in were all counterfeit bills. Unfortunately, as he paid in cash, we had no way of tracking him down. So we think that he just got away with stealing $400 worth of gas. That is, until this idiot comes back after about a month and a half, thinking he got away with stealing the gas. When he comes back in, I recognize the guy and tell my coworker to call the police right away. However, I knew this guy would leave if I let on that I had recognized him and we had discovered his plot to get free gas, so I decided to pretend I don't recognize him. Luckily for me, this guy asks to dock the boat for an hour or so on our dock, and I tell him it's not a problem. Now, it's a policy to get the name and phone number of the customers using the free dockage, as well as asking that they leave their keys in the boat so that we can move the boat to a different dock if needed. He complies to all of the rules and leaves his boat, and he leaves his keys with me. After probably about 15 minutes of waiting, the police show up on the dock and ask my boss where the guy is. My boss tells them he just left his boat, but we have his number and we can get him to come back to the boat, and then he instructs me to do just that. At this point, I was pissed at the dude for making me look dumb for basically losing $400. So I call and tell him, "Hey, this is me from Marina. It seems as though there was an issue with your engine, and it seems to be smoking." For those that don't know boats that well, engines are very expensive, and this one in particular was a 350 horsepower Yamaha engine, which is top of the line, so that man got back to the boat in record time. When he got back to the boat, the look on his face when he saw 2 cops waiting for him was priceless. He tried to play it off and act like he had done nothing wrong, and that he didn't know why the police were there. But that was short-lived as they arrested him and told him why he was being arrested. Turns out the guy had almost $2,000 in counterfeit $100 bills on him. See, people like this is one of the reasons why I'm kind of like uncomfortable working with money, especially since I deal with cash so rarely that I probably wouldn't even notice if it was counterfeit. A couple of coworkers get me fired while I was going through a breakup. It was my time to shine. So this happened last Thursday. I was working on a job that we had been on for about 2 months now. I'm a plumbing apprentice, so typically you aren't supposed to be on your phone on the job. However, I was going through a pretty nasty breakup, and I was upset about it. I wasn't on my phone too much though. I only responded a few times when I had a minute to do so. And I took one phone call that lasted all of 2 minutes. Basically just to defuse the situation for the time being, so I could deal with the situation after work. I thought nothing of this, because my coworkers were on their phones throughout the day too. They always more or less moved at their own pace, and did as they pleased, so long as the boss or his son wasn't around. The difference between us is, they felt like they were untouchable because they were all also close friends with the boss's son, but you wouldn't know it given the amount of time they spend making fun of the guy, both in text and in person. Also, this particular breakup day, the guy decides to take an hour-and-a-half lunch. Our lunches are only supposed to be 30 minutes long. This wasn't anything out of the ordinary though, as they've taken lunches anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour long every day since we had been on this particular job. Okay, that's cool. So I left the job site in a separate truck, as two of the other guys that I worked with, a few minutes behind them because I was talking to the general contractor for a minute before I left. So when I got back to the shop, I see the two other guys walking away to their cars, and I parked and went to clock out. Before I could do so, the boss's son pulls me aside and said the two guys that had just left said I hadn't done anything all day. Not true, I was running water lines by myself, and I've only been doing this for less than a year, so my speed obviously isn't crazy fast. He said they also told him that I was on my phone all day, which also was not true. He told me my check would be there in the morning, but I no longer have a job. I was angry and upset, so I just walked out and drove home. I could have left it at that, but I was out for blood at that point. I sent the boss and his son a detailed message telling them how their employees on the job have been effing off the entire time. I told them about the hour-plus long lunches, the phones used on their end, the fact that they would often just stand around on the job site and talk to each other, and the general day-to-day BS they would do when the boss wasn't there, which was a lot. To top it off, I told the boss's son separately about all the crap talking they do on him, how they say he's dating a whore, they don't like hanging out with him outside of work, and they're all going to quit when the business goes to him. Oh, and I included some screenshots of little BS they said about him in group texts a few weeks prior, just for added pettiness. He said, okay, thanks. When I went to the shop the next day, I found my check on the desk, next to screenshots of my text that had been printed out with several copies for the guys to read. My face lit up with the most evil grin imaginable. I called my only friend I had at this job. He told me the guys that had been on the job with me looked like ghosts when the boss's son handed them those texts. I also found out one of the guys was apparently already on thin ice, and he got fired as well. I guess since he was the guy's friend, but also only an apprentice, he found that he was more disposable than he thought. He also told me that the boss's son told them that he would fire anybody, and not to think it wouldn't happen to them too. Also, a strict no phone policy was implemented. Since then I found a new, better paying job, and I left a dumpster fire in my wake. Hey, that's the best way to leave a job, honestly. I mean, it might not even seem like much that he's just kind of ratting out his coworkers, but when the management comes in and just makes everything super strict, that can make a job go from reasonably fun to horrible. So I would actually say this was probably a little bit more than petty revenge. But that kind of leads into the question of the day, which is, what's your F this, I quit story? And the first response from this actually doesn't even come from the question, but I thought it fit here, from I don't work here, lady. So I was playing a roulette dealer in a movie being shot in a casino in Vegas. We did my scene, and I stayed to watch the next scene with Ed Asner at a craps table. The pit boss came up to me and started yelling at me. You know the rules. You are either at your table or you are in the break area. Turn in your time card. You're fired. This attracted the attention of my film crew, who started laughing. This made him go ballistic. He was just about frothing at the mouth when I told him, I don't think you can fire me. I'm an actor on this movie. This really took the wind out of his sails and he slunk off. The crew thought it was the best thing ever and told me I made their day. Okay, so he technically didn't quit or anything, but I have to imagine that shooting a movie in Las Vegas has got to be really difficult because Vegas doesn't stop for anything. So I mean, it probably has a lot of realism to whatever you're shooting there. I worked for a company for over a year that was contracted to make deliveries for Amazon. The vans they equipped us with were terribly maintained and fully unequipped to handle winter weather. I worked with the company through their first winter, which meant sliding all over the road when it was icy, getting stuck constantly every time we had snow. I never had a major accident, though I did have 2 or 3 close calls where only minor damage was incurred to the van. I decided to stick it out through the summer, when the weather was obviously much better. All summer long they promised us that new and better vans were coming. September rolls around, no vans. October, no vans. November, no vans. That month we got our first real snow. I got back from my route and immediately put in my notice. My boss told me they would be getting new vans by the end of the year. I told her that was nice, and walked. Yeah, that's when you're just like, I've heard that one before, see ya. I was in the same position for 2 years, and was actively looking at other positions within the same company. The bosses knew about it, it was just time for a change and advance my career. Great opportunity came up and I was offered the position. However, my current leadership blocked me because I received a promotion 6 months prior. That promotion was literally an automatic email. They said, "Congrats, you're now level 2 instead of level 1, because I met my sales attainment and completed all my yearly trainings." Literally an automated email stopped me from getting promoted, and my bosses said I had to wait another 18 months. I left that company and went to a competitor doing the same thing for better pay and significantly more support. See, let this be a lesson to business owners. If you don't treat your employees right, they'll leave and go work for somebody else. I was working at a restaurant in Marlboro, Tennessee. I found a better job that actually gave me hours and went in to put my 2 weeks notice in out of courtesy. It was more like a week and a few days due to the timing of the new gig. I got a lecture about how I could never come back to the company since it wasn't a full 2 weeks. I then suggested politely that, "That's great, let's say today is my last day then." It was such a relief. Yeah, I know that feeling. It's like when things start to get awkward, you just want to get out of there as soon as possible. I was 20 and had been working in a call center for just over a year. I was promoted to an assistant manager with new compensation structure that was identical to the other assistant manager. Basically, you got your wage, a very small percentage of the total office revenue, and then 10% of your own revenue from when you worked on the phone. My immediate manager and office supervisor gave me this without confirming it with the regional manager, who was on a 2-month vacation in the DR. When I got my first check after being promoted, there was no bonus. I was told it would be corrected soon. When I got my second check after being promoted, there was no bonus. I was told it would be corrected soon. When I got my third check after being promoted, there was no bonus, and I was told that I had to wait for the regional manager to come back and authorize it. I was being paid weekly and worked another 4 weeks under the premise that I was getting a lump sum when the regional manager returned. The problem was that I sold significantly more than the other office manager. The back pay had grown to such a large amount that when the regional manager did return, he questioned why the office manager had given me this structure, as he considered it to be too much money. On my next check, there was no lump sum, and I was told that they were figuring out a new structure. My following shift, I stayed home and got a frantic call from my office manager, asking me why I wasn't at work. I told him I couldn't afford to go to work. He said, "Why can't you afford it?" "Because I've been getting ripped off for 2 months. Call me back when you have my money, or don't call me at all." Never did get paid. I mean, if you have an employee who's making you a lot of money, and you were supposed to be giving them commissions for all the money that they were making you, but you say, "We can't give you that because that's too much money," then you deserve to lose. Currently in the US military. Was back and forth about re-enlisting for another 4 years. I've done 9 at this point. I have a 3-year-old daughter at home, who I haven't seen in almost 2 years for more than 3 weeks. I was talking to an officer in my chain of command where I told him my thoughts. I had just received orders to remain overseas for an additional 2 years. His exact words were, "You've already missed 2 years of her life, you can afford to lose 2 more. I went to my command career counselor office that day and signed my intention to separate. It's like, well, we've already sucked up most of your life, can't you just get used to it? I was at a job for 3 years, consistently in the top 3 of my department in terms of performance. I asked my supervisor repeatedly if I could be recommended for advancement/promotion, and he always told me he was trying his best to get me new opportunities. I found out from a friend in a different department that I'd been considered a top candidate for 4 different promotions, and each time my supervisor had blocked it. When I confronted him about this information, he told me it was true, and he did it because I could never find someone who does what you do without paying them a lot more. Internally said, "F this," I quit, and found a new job within 3 months. Took all my PTO, and on the day I came back, I quit 2 hours into the day, leaving him high and dry at the peak time. F that dude. Yeah, don't you love that when employers love hiring you because they know they can underpay you? Well, that's the end of the stories we've got today. I have thought a lot lately about looking for a new job, and stories like this kind of remind me of what to look out for. But anyways, hope you guys are doing well, so thanks for watching.